In order to grow, we have to face our past. We have to face all aspects of the lives we have led up till now. That includes the good and the bad. It includes the successes as well as the failures. It includes the things we're proud of as well as the things we might be ashamed of too. Because that's the only way we start to develop a compassion for ourselves, an understanding for ourselves, and paint a story of ourselves that is one of growth, redemption, and continuing elevation. Now, this is as much the case for us as individuals as it is for nations. It's all about developing the story of who we are. And that story has to be real, it has to be grounded in truth. And it has to involve an acceptance of all parts of our past. Now, Germany, for example, had to do this in the most extreme way in the last century. The way in which they had to come to terms with the fact of the horrors that their nation committed during the Second World War. They had to come to terms with the fact that many of them were involved in the Nazi regime, that they were the ones who brought about a Holocaust for millions and millions of Jews, and the fact that that is something they should never deny and something they must always be aware of and wary of in terms of directions they might travel one day in their own nature. And it's exactly the same with America's original sin of slavery. This is a core and fundamental part of the American story. It's something that really happened, and the damage that it caused is undoubtable to millions of people and countless generations that followed that afterwards. This is a fundamental part of the American story, both what happened, the pain it caused, and the progress they made coming out of it too. And because of that, it has consistently been remembered in American culture, whether that's in cinemas or artwork or books and poetry, and also of course in museums. A big part of many American museums is a representation and a remembrance of slavery, just like there's remembrances and representations of the Holocaust in German museums. There is the same in American museums about slavery. And no American president, no American politician in the mainstream or at senior levels has ever questioned the importance of this in terms of the American story and the American fabric. Nobody has ever denied that it happened or that the lessons of it are essential to learn and to always keep on learning. You see, it's a little bit like the way that an alcoholic thinks about their own past, even a recovering alcoholic. Because you'll often find that recovering alcoholics will often still refer to themselves as alcoholics, even if they haven't touched a drink for 10, 20 years, for decades. This is a specific rule in Alcoholics Anonymous, for example. They call themselves alcoholics even if they haven't touched a drop of alcohol for decades. Why? Because they want to remember the fact that that propensity existed within them, and somewhere deep inside it always still exists within them. And therefore, their duty to themselves is to always keep that in check, always be aware of that strand within them, so that way they can always steer themselves away from it. I have treated people with alcoholism in the past, and that's exactly what I've seen really works for people. The people who say, oh, that's gone, that's in the past, it's never going to come back, they're the ones who are actually more vulnerable to relapse than those people who are very aware and say, you know what, that was a tendency in me and it's still a tendency in me and I have to always check out for it. Now, it's exactly the same in the national psyche. There are horrors that have been committed in the name of a nation, and the nation must always be aware that there's a part of us, there's a strand within us, within our national psyche that can take us there again. So we must always maintain an awareness of that. As I say, this is something that American presidents have always understood and therefore never challenged or questioned. And now for the first time in the history of America, since the abolition of slavery, we have an American president who's actually asking the question, should we really be spending this much effort or time or space on remembering how bad slavery was? He's complaining about the Smithsonian exhibits about slavery, saying they spend too much of their space on reminding people, on talking about how bad slavery was. Now, That's the exact quote, how bad slavery was. Now, does that mean that he does not believe that slavery was so bad? That he's unhappy with them for talking about how bad slavery was because he doesn't actually agree with that he doesn't think it was so bad? Does it mean that? Or does it mean that he just doesn't want to be reminded of it? That he just doesn't like the fact that people are being reminded of it at all? Now, both those interpretations are actually perfectly in keeping with his ideology and with his personality. We know his attitude towards minorities has been consistently derogatory, judgmental, and disparaging. We know, in addition, that his attitude towards personal history, towards history in general, is one of determination to suppress. Just avoid thinking about the past, avoid thinking about bad things. It's all going to be fine. He likes to try to brush things under the carpet. But the problem is that when you do that, when you brush things under the carpet, then they risk coming up somewhere else in future. And we've seen that in Trump in terms of his own behavior. Now, he said that not only are they going to review the Smithsonian's funding because of the way they actually highlight slavery in some places, he said he's going to engage in the same process with all museums across the US, particularly those who have anything to do with the representations of slavery. This is a truly dangerous thing. It is unprecedented in American history and American culture. And one of the greatest losses that will occur if slavery is written out of the American narrative is that what also goes out of the American narrative is the redemption story that goes with it, the way in which the country has strived to form a more perfect union ever since then. And it's, of course, a work in progress. It hasn't cracked it. It's not perfect by any means, but it's a work that has gone on and that has inspired generations. This was very well articulated by Joe Scarborough just the other day on Morning Joe.
Talk about how a guy raised in abject poverty became a state legislator in Illinois in 1933 and spent the next 30 years dragging a racist, recalcitrant nation to emancipating Americans, Black Americans. And how you have Frederick Douglass at the same time, sort of, going at him, but at times also being an ally with him. And together, they helped bring us out of that terrible chapter in American history. You can talk about, a guy like LBJ, who was opposed in many ways to the 1957 Civil Rights Act, transformed 7 years later to pass the most extraordinary civil rights legislation in 64 and 65. That's the story we want to tell. It is a story of a country that continues to move towards being a more perfect union. And sometimes we take some steps back. But it's an inspiring story for future generations to tell. We have to tell that story. It inspires future generations that no matter what we're going through, we can do better. We can be better.
So slavery must be remembered both for the crime that it was, but also for the journey that the country has had to take to liberate itself from it and continues to take. It is a core landmark in the American story, and it must not be forgotten. And no American president should ever be in a position of trying to deny or suppress its memory. This is just one of the ways in which Donald Trump's presidency has essentially represented a cancer on the American psyche. Other people and commentators are now echoing what he's saying, folks from the right. He gives people permission to think the unthinkable and say the unsayable. But this time, it must not be allowed to stand. This truly is a battle for the soul of America. I hope you like my video. We have a wonderful community of folks here who are subscribers to this channel, so I hope you consider subscribing to the channel too. We're here to support each other in this time of global trauma, and people are passing comments to each other, sharing their experiences, and affirming and supporting one another through the comments section of this channel. So I'm really proud of and inspired by the community that we're creating, and I hope you can join us on that basis. Also, I have a mailing list. The link is in the description of the video and the channel. If you can join that, then we can stay in touch by email on an ongoing basis, because let's face it, all these channels are basically owned by a small number of oligarchs, and at any point they could decide that they want to shut a channel like mine down. And if that's the case, then, well, we'll lose touch. So if you can subscribe to my newsletter, then we can stay in touch, and you can stay in touch with my content on an ongoing basis. Finally, I also have the ability to become a member of the channel. It'd be great if you can join us to be a member of the channel. You get regular free ebooks on an ongoing basis. Every month I produce a new ebook, me and my team, that help us understand the psychology of the people in the world around us, but most importantly, help us understand our own psychology too, to help us to navigate this difficult and traumatic period we're going through right now. And in addition, whether you'd become a member of the channel or not, you're also welcome to visit that little bookstore and buy any of the books anytime. And it's called russellsbooks.com. That's at russellsbooks.com. And yeah, you can go to that website and buy and download any of the books anytime. But as I say, if you become a member of the channel, you'll get that for free as well. I really hope that we can stay connected. As a psychiatrist and somebody who is also fascinated by politics, I love to make these videos. I hope to continue to do so. I hope to stay connected and continue this ongoing conversation with the audience, so that ultimately we can create a better tomorrow together. Thank you.